You know what? I need to brainstorm. You might need to help me with one. Although you always throw out stupid ones that I'd never actually use for my new top 10 list this week to rank.
So the top 10 rub and tugs local to you did not make the cut?
And somebody actually put it in the comments. They're like, I thought you were going to rank that. I was like, no. Why would I even know that?
How about you rank the top 10 items you can buy at omahasteaks.com with code Mayo?
do I get part of the proceeds? Is that how that works?
I mean, they've already paid me. I don't get anything additional on top of it, so no.
Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. Week 14, we're almost in the fantasy playoffs. Rankings by position. All of the rankings lists are up on dknetwork.com and hyperlinks down in the description. Position by position time codes down in the description as well, as is the Week 14 Pat Mayo Experience Listeners League. It's rake free, it's 3 max entry, and $15 to play. No rake, thus making it the best tournament on DraftKings. Plus, if you always want to get it on props, or you want to run the Sims in terms of simulations or an optimizer, runthesims.com. You can get different packages, but code MAYO will get you 10% off of all of them. Highly recommend that you check them out. Jake, did you send your Omaha steaks using code MAYO to anyone yet?
Not yet. No, yes, I did, but they're not there yet. They're waiting. They're for Christmas.
Yes, that's why people need to do it now. You don't want to do it on like December 22nd, because I don't think it's going to show up for Christmas time. Do it today using code MAYO at omahasteaks.com, and it'll be there in plenty of time.
Yeah, if you wait till that long, you could call it a Valentine's Day present.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing to get on Valentine's Day either, although that'd probably be a better ad for a female-heavy audience buying for their husbands rather than a predominantly male audience trying to buy for their wives. Like, here's some steaks.
Honey, I bought you meat to make.
I mean, I make the food in my house, Jake. Jesus. Sorry, we're not all living in a 1950s marriage.
Hey, we do 50-50 over here as well. I was just going with how you were presenting it.
Ah, yes, I see. All right, well, let's jump into the rankings and the injuries at running back, because we got a few of them. We don't know what's happening with a lot of them. So Ramondre Stevenson exited the game with an ankle injury. He's probably going to go on injured reserve. He is not playing on Thursday Night Football, so Zeke is now the starter for the New England Patriots. We'll have a discussion about this. Derrick Henry hurt his shoulder and was placed in concussion protocol, but he is not in concussion protocol as of Monday. So we'll see how his shoulder is doing. So he may play this week. I have him out of the rankings as of right now, but we'll talk about that. Brian Robinson hurt his hamstring, but the Commanders are on bye week, so you don't need to worry about that. Thursday Night Football, Zach Charbonnet injured his knee. It was a knee bruise, so he should play this week. I also have Kenneth Walker in the rankings as well. We'll see if he's able to go with his oblique injury. A lot on the line for Seattle against San Francisco that they need to pick up a win somewhere here, so we'll see how that goes. Not sure about the status of Donta Foreman as of yet with his ankle injury coming off of bye. Amare DiMercato hurt his neck in the Cardinals game against the Steelers, but the Cardinals are on bye, so we'll keep an eye on... Actually, we don't even need to keep an eye on him. No one really cares what he's up to. It's just basically James Conner and Michael Carter, or James Conner and Michael Carter at this point. Jonathan Taylor is expected to miss multiple weeks, so more Zach Moss, Aaron Jones. I'm just leaving him out of the rankings until that they say that he's going to be in. And Jerick McKinnon missed last week as well, so he is currently, I believe I have him out of the rankings, but he's been a non-factor all season long. They only use him in playoffs, so they're trying to keep him healthy for a playoff run. They are minus 3,000 right now at DraftKings Sportsbook to win their division, so no matter how poorly the Chiefs may be playing, they're probably going to be going to the playoffs. So the rankings themselves this week, I mean, it's no different than it normally is. McCaffrey's at the top. You got ETN at 2. Kamara. I have Devin Achane at number 4. Eckler at 5, Gibbs, Pacheco, Zach Moss at number 8, Javonte Williams, David Montgomery, Raheem Mostert, Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, and then we're at your guy, Kyron Williams, who not a great matchup here. And if you do the splits between the Browns at home versus the Browns on the road, it's no, they're at Baltimore, sorry. Baltimore at home, and even Baltimore on the road. It's just tough to run on Baltimore, man.
No, you're not wrong. And I'm not going to argue to put him too much higher this week, especially with only 2 teams on a bye. And you're mentioning the opportunity here if you're going to beat Baltimore, kind of similar to what the Eagles were at the beginning of the season, not the Eagles now, because you could just throw for days over on the Eagles. But similar to what we were said at the beginning of the year was you attack the Eagles at the slot, tight ends, quick options over the middle of the field. Well, they could do that with Stafford, Nakua, and Cooper Kupp. So I think that where you have him is a fair spot. You put him kind of in that Bell Cowie, Josh Jacobs range. The only one that I would really even push back on so far is just we talked about last week, and it was a down game, so I'm surprised you have him as high as you do. But Austin Eckler, Austin Eckler just isn't good anymore.
Yeah, but what do you do with him though? Because it's not like he's not involved. Does he deserve to be in that Pollard Jacobs?
1.8 yards per carry.
Yeah, I mean that's
right.
Yeah, but before it didn't matter because he kept scoring touchdowns all the time. Now he's not scoring touchdowns.
Right. So I think that he has to be down by Saquon Barkley. Honestly.
Okay, so Eckler down to 15 behind Rashad White.
If I had my lineup, I would feel better about starting Barkley than I would against Eckler at this point. The only thing I kind of want to go back to that just makes me feel like. It's interesting. Like, if we were only talking 2023, Pat, I'd be like, nope, need to put him out even further. I don't care that he's playing the Broncos, but the Broncos' run defense is still trash. Their pass defense is good, but you can still run for days all over them. And then I look at it and say, you know what? If it's not the fact that I know Austin Eckler can do it any given week, I kind of want to be like, wow, can I really sit him against the Broncos' run defense? But in that case, if just given this year, I think he deserves to be behind Barkley this week. And Bijan Robinson on the other side of the ball against Tampa Bay, I mean, I'm not saying that's just a one-game sample. I'm going to be like, ooh, now Tampa Bay can't stop the run anymore. But last week, they didn't stop the run against a mediocre running back. I think I would go Bijan before Eckler at this point. But I'm not going to argue much about him. I just think he deserves to be in that tier of those guys at least.
The issue with Bijan right now, the Jets apparently have a very bad run defense, from what I was told last week. And
yes,
one of the reasons that I took the Jets to cover the spread, they did not cover the spread, so it was a bad pick either way. But it was my contention that, and Rob Pizzola pointed out, defenses don't really change what they do depending on the opponent. But I was like, the Falcons can't throw. So you can commit to stopping the run if that's the only thing that you know that they can do. And that's kind of what the Jets did. It's just they couldn't score any points. They turned the ball over 4 times.
That's the bigger problem here. And now we see Zach Wilson doesn't want to play quarterback anymore. He's done, even if they want to turn back to him. But yeah, I'm looking at the fact that, again, it was Chuba Hubbard, and I'm not going to be like, oh, the Carolina Panthers, their offensive line still stinks, but I'm just saying, I'm not going to be that scared against them. I wouldn't rank anybody inside the top 10, even some of the best of the best, but that was what, I'll give you something else. You talk about that process. I had Tyler Algier just inside my top 30 running backs because if they're going to continue to run the ball 30, 35 times a game, he's going to get a dozen carries. And they did. They ran it 33 times, and he only got 8. So I was wrong on that one. But I don't think, as you just said, they go away from that against Tampa Bay, even though Tampa Bay's pass defense is trash. But the one thing that you can say is at least Bijan's going to get the passing game working. So, again, I think I would struggle with it. I would struggle between Eckler and Bijan if I had that choice. I don't know that nobody has that choice unless you made a trade. But the point being is I think we're at least in agreement that Austin Eckler's in a conversation with White, Barkley, and Bijan where normally he would be top 10.
Yes, I would completely agree. And I think that's sort of a segregated part of these rankings as well. I mean, we can even throw Pollard and Jacobs into that. What do you make of Mostert? I have Mostert at 10 right now. And it seems, I think
that was some game script.
It was, but it was A-Chain coming off of an injury. When we saw A-Chain before the injury, he started to take over the majority of the work regardless of game flow. And it's not like the Dolphins aren't, 13-point favorites this week?
I think it's close to that. I know it was close to double digits when the line first came out. So, yeah, the thing is it was heavy Mostert in the first half and then heavy Achane in the second half. I'd lean 50-50. So where you have them, I mean, Achane is top 5 and Mostert is an RB1. I still put him in that range. If you wanted to, you brought up Pollard. If you wanted to say, you know what, I'm going to go back to Pollard, even though the Eagles' run defense has been the only consistent part that they have. It's not the best in the world, but it's at least concerning. Pollard's getting he's getting in the end zone now. He's getting those carries now. So Josh Jacobs against Minnesota's actually been pretty good against the run this year. If you want to slide him back a few spots, but I could see keeping him where he is. Again, they should run away with this one.
It just feels like in Tennessee's run defense was much better at the beginning of the year than it is right now, although they made us all look foolish with Zach Moss on DraftKings this week, although Moss had his opportunities to score. He just didn't get in.
Yeah, I said this after the game too. You tell me the same process, it happens again, 21 touches, I would still rank Zach Moss top 10 running back. I'd rank most running backs top 10 if you're going to get 21 touches any given week. I don't care that it was Tennessee. And, like I watched a lot of that game because I did have Zach Moss in some betting spots too. And I looked at that. And honestly, the offensive line wasn't doing him favors on that one. You could argue that was the Titans, but he was getting hit a lot at the line of scrimmage. He was getting hit before he even got to the line of scrimmage. And then he didn't get, like you said, the touchdown could have saved his day, but he couldn't get going, which was the frustrating thing. But against Miami, I don't think or not Miami, sorry, against the Cincinnati Bengals, I don't think Zach Moss is going to have problems this week.
No, I don't think so either. Cincinnati's been a team I've been picking on for months now in terms of run defense.
Yeah.
They just cannot stop anyone. And look, as favorites in that game against Cincinnati, and Cincinnati hasn't even played in week 13 as the time of this recording, they're playing on Monday night, that they could be even more decimated by the time, and they're playing on a short week by the time they play Indianapolis. So if we can lock in 21 touches for Moss against the Bengals, that's why I have him ranked at number 7.
Yeah, I think that it's a good spot for him.
So we have this like Pollard, Jacobs, Williams, White, Eckler, Barkley, Bijan tier. And I really do think that's a tier. It goes from 11 to 17. Then it's kind of a free-for-all with like running back ones on their teams that are going to get the majority of work, but Lord knows how this is going to shake out in terms of touches, opportunities, what have you. So I have James Cook at 18 against the Chiefs, A.J. Dillon, presuming that there is no Aaron Jones in that game. It's a nice matchup on Monday Night Football against the Giants. I have Tajee Spears with no Derrick Henry at the moment, so we can talk about that a little bit more at number 20, because it's not the best matchup, right? You can run on Miami, but if you get down by a bunch, you're not going to run a bunch. So would it make sense that even if Henry was active to still have Spears above Henry because you would expect him to do more in the passing game? Or is Tennessee just going to do what they do, try to hang around by running the ball as much as possible?
I would lean more that way, especially what we've seen from Will Levis after his first game and since then. And then even so, we kind of ran into this earlier this year where Spears was getting the snaps, but Henry was still getting more touches because basically it was kind of the argument he made about some wide receivers is that when he's on the field, he's getting the ball. It's whether or not, Tajee Spears gets the ball when he's on the field. That doesn't always happen. So I could see Spears being in play with once we get down into the 20s, even with Henry. But for Henry, I was going to say, I would say close to an RB1, but now I'm looking at it, and in this match, as you mentioned, they get down quick against Miami. Derrick Henry versus Saquon Barkley versus Rachaad White, I don't think you can go much higher than 15, 16. I think he deserves to, because you brought it up last week, and, granted it happened again, the 2 touchdowns, but, he's still only barely scoring 20 points with 2 touchdowns.
That's the whole thing. If Henry is in, I'd rank him at number 18. I'd have him a spot ahead of James Cook and one behind Bijan. He's playable, but he's not.
I'm good with that.
And Spears probably falls into this Chuba Hubbard, Ken Walker, Gus Edwards type of range where we don't even really know what's going on in some of these backfields where it seems like he's electric enough to break a big one off at this point, which is really funny to say that it feels like his big play potential is better than Derrick Henry's at the moment, knowing that Derrick Henry's entire career is the big play. Basically, they just wears you down, then breaks one off for 80 yards. He just doesn't feel like he has the breakaway speed anymore.
No, it doesn't, but you get people bouncing off of you and you can still break away from them. But you're not wrong about that. I'm still surprised by this whole concussion thing. I was talking about it with Nicole before we came on. Henry's arm went like this. He did the stiff knockout UFC thing, and I don't understand how he doesn't have a concussion.
I thought it was his shoulder because I remember in my senior year, I got tackled in a very similar way. I just kind of landed like this. I landed on my shoulder kind of like he did, and I separated my shoulder, and just because the force of landing on you. Now he's a much bigger man than I am, so but I don't know. It looked bad, and his kind of had a droopy shoulder coming off. I thought it was a shoulder injury, not a concussion, until I heard it.
Oh, that's it. It's funny because I saw some people on Twitter. They were saying that they thought it was his knees because he was walking wobbly, and I was like, well, that was the wobbly that I saw from the helmet hit him right here, on the side. Anyway, they're saying he doesn't have a concussion. I hope that they're not messing around with this because how serious it is. But if they're saying he doesn't have one, Yeah, 18, and then Spears. It's funny that you brought that up because I immediately started kind of looking down your ranks to say, like, where would I slot in Spears? And I immediately thought about Ken Walker versus San Francisco coming back off his injury, and that split in Charbonnet's looked good. That's right around the spot where I started thinking about Spears.
Spears with Henry active or Spears without Henry active?
Spears with Henry active.
Yeah.
With him. Oh, I actually like Spears. I even like Spears a little bit more than James Cook if there's no Henry.
I can see that.
But it's the same tier. We don't need to nitpick that.
Yeah. So after that, like I have DeAndre Swift at 21. I don't even know what his injury is. They wouldn't say. So I don't know if he's going to play this week against Dallas or not. But presumably, let's say he's in. I have him at 21. If he sits, how high would you put up Kenneth Gainwell?
Ooh, Kenneth Gainwell. My concern about this is the same thing we've seen in past years. He's been pretty much irrelevant. But you remember last year and the year before, and I remember because I kept giving Chris Meany credit the very first time it happened.
In playoffs.
He's like, I know my team. You know, yeah, well, no, it was for the injury and that what they had to turn to behind him, and when it was going to be, when it was Miles Sanders, when it was going to be Gainwell or Boston Scott. Meany on All in Football sat there and said, I know my team, it's going to be Boston Scott for the touchdowns. And he was right, called it 100%. And every single time it's been Gainwell and Scott share a lot, but then they turn to Scott inside the 10. So why I present all that is it's different this year with Swift in the mix. They've barely used Scott. I still think Scott would come in and throw a wrench into this. I would still go Gainwell over him, but I don't know that Scott doesn't take all of the potential goal line opportunities away from him. So I would pause on Gainwell going anywhere higher than pretty much where the Spears Swift is, because I'd play him over Madison because of that split situation, but I wouldn't put him over AJ Dillon, who I know is going to get all the work.
I'm probably with you. I'm less concerned about Gainwell not touching the ball inside of the 10 because that's just Jalen Hurts territory anyway.
That's true. You're not wrong there.
So I'm not really factoring in a bunch of touchdowns like equity for any of them if they come in, because I assume if they get inside, like, yeah, it might be nice that Boston Scott gets a few carries from the 8-yard line. If they're inside the 3-yard line, kind of know what's going to happen with Philly.
Yeah, that's the thing is, but I mean, even if it wasn't the Scott, even if I threw that out as not an argument, you just brought up the other part of it. It's like you can't really go much higher because it hurts anyway.
True, but the one thing, I guess because they were down in that game, they kind of had to turn to him, and it seemed like I'm shocked they brought Hurts back into the game after he had a potential concussion. I guess it was maybe to show that he didn't have it so they can most definitely have him for Dallas this week. But once you're down by 20-something points, just play Marcus Mariota.
Oh gosh, yeah, I miss Marcus Mariota just for the fun of it.
But remember when he threw that touchdown to himself in the playoffs?
I know, that's what I meant. The fun of it, like there's just always something crazy with it. He's more scrambly Gardner Minshew. You just know bat crap crazy things are going to happen when he's at quarterback.
So the least inspiring ranking of the week is Madison at number 22. That's just kind of where he's going to have to end up being at every week because he still gets the volume. He's just not any good. So that's a problem. I have Keaton Mitchell at number 23. I think coming out of this bye, he's going to be their lead back.
All right, so I'm really glad you brought this up. So are you going with the narrative? And I'm not saying I'm asking you. Like the people that always present the narrative is like after the bye, the rookie running back, this is where he's going to break out and get all his touches, or you're just going for the fact of where I was leaning, which maybe is probably where you're headed, is that right before the bye, they kind of lean towards Mitchell as full-on committee, but he got the most work, and if you're already heading in that direction into a bye, why not come out of it and just start going with him and Gus Edwards and just forget Justice Hill?
That is bingo. That's a bingo, Jake, of where I was going with. And that can be completely wrong at the same time. He just is their most explosive running back. So even if they kind of get the Gainwell-Scott treatment, I mean, we can kind of equate that. If we throw Justice Hill out of the equation, bring in Gus Edwards as the Boston Scott type of, he's still going to get his 13 carries between the tackles, and he might get the goal line work. Mitchell's the one who's going to score the long touchdown if they're going to score a touchdown here. Like, he just hits the edge and he's gone.
Yeah. Okay. So we're 100% on the same page.
Yeah. Then I have Zeke at 24. He might have like 13 catches in this game.
He might. I was actually looking at Zeke potentially being a little bit higher.
It's just it's the lowest total of the year of any game that is open. So just the overall, even if you think that he gets 100% of every carry, if he gets 100% of New England's running back touches in the game, like how good is that even?
I mean, you brought up the passing game work. So like I could just see, I'm looking right now. So I would go over Madison. I just would because he's getting all the work. Like
Okay.
Madison got more of the share before they hit their bye. And it was weird because Ty Chandler, right before that, as we had talked about on this very show, is that Ty Chandler was doing more in his touches. And Ty Chandler was about 45% of the work. And then they strangely went to Madison a decent amount. I don't know that it carries through. And even if it does carry through, he's still seeding some. Like, who are the Patriots going to give the ball to besides Zeke? Like, we're really going to play this game with all these other options that they've had for years and they've never used. So that's really what it comes down to. I'm not excited about it. I would use what you said about Madison before you presented it. In the least inspired ranking of the week, Zeke and Madison, just put them back to back.
Well, I think Chuba Hubbard needs to be worked into that mix too. Like 25 carries against one of the better run defenses in football. When I know they took the lead briefly in that game, but they were just like, hey, Bryce Young, don't throw a pick six, and we're going to design an offense around that. So we're going to hand the ball off every single time. And the weird thing about New Orleans, because it's probably going to be Jameis playing quarterback or Taysom Hill at this point, with Carr suffering both a concussion, a shoulder, and back injury. That's always fun. The guy's going to be out there in a wheelchair. They're going to roll him back in. He's just going to be in a full body cast. Like, I mean, he might be better at that point. Lord knows, because he's so terrible. But the Saints still can move the ball. But their defense is a shell of what it once was.
It's definitely a shell. I mean, you can't just put it all on Lattimore. It just hasn't been very good.
So should I move Hubbard up? Like, should he be in that Zeke Madison conversation? Because weirdly enough, like I would have expected, like I know they have Blackshear and they did like a check down to Miles Sanders, but it was either a handoff or there was no check down to the running back whatsoever. I think he had 0 targets.
I was just about to pull. I'm pulling that up right now to see the week 13.
Yeah,
just
zero
where that backfield
zero
was all-
targets for him.
And see, that's why I don't know how much higher I can go on this. And again, it's Tampa Bay, so people are gonna be like, "Wow, it's Tampa Bay did so good," but I can't trust. Look, this is, we kind of didn't even hit on this yet. There's something I was going to bring up right off the top is that this is now you need to get in. Normally we'd be talking about week 14. This immediately popped into my mind as you started the show. It's like 2 years ago we were talking playoffs already. This was playoffs. This is your last chance to get in, unless you're just cruising into a bye. Do you really want to lean on Chuba Hubbard to make your playoffs? And that's the thing is like I'm just thinking objectively in the fact of
think about it this way. Like I'm in this position. I'm 7-6 in my home league. I need to win, and I need to score a bunch of points, probably. Just with the way that this 14-team league shook out, there's like 8 teams that are above 500. There's like 3 really brutal teams. So if I had the decision this week between Chuba Hubbard and Ken Walker, obviously I'm going to look at the injury report to see what pops up for everyone. But I don't know if I can trust Ken Walker in a D matchup against San Francisco in a game where they're double-digit underdogs coming off an injury. Hell, I don't even know if he's going to play or not. But if he's active, like, how can you trust that guy? Like, I still have him at 27 because he's probably a better.
Yeah.
I think that he is a better option than Joe Mixon at this point in that terrible offense. But I have no faith that he's going to do anything.
No, I would play Charbonnet over Ken Walker at this point.
Would
even
you?
if Ken Walker is active.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're not worried about the knee at all?
But for Charbonnet,
Yeah.
I mean, that's another one we have to pay attention and watch. Obviously, if he's missing practice all the way up through Friday, then this entire backfield is going to be basically we're going to check back at the end of the week and update the rankings like we always do, Pat. But that one, if I 100%, both were so there's a varying scenarios here. If they're both cleared 100% practicing, I would go Charbonnet over Walker. If they're both 50-50 the entire week, I would go Charbonnet over Walker. If Walker 100% practicing and Charbonnet is limited the entire week, okay, now I'm probably leaning Kenneth Walker. So basically 2 out of 3 situations I'm going Charbonnet. To come back to Chuba Hubbard, I see your argument for that. And I'm looking down to say Gus Edwards against the Rams, I'd probably go Chuba Hubbard there too, because if Gus Edwards basically discount Derrick Henry's situation where if he doesn't score a touchdown, it's a bad day. And against the Rams, what if this turns out to be like it hasn't happened often, but what if this turns out to be a game where they are playing a little quicker tempo? They are passing a little bit more. We've seen the Ravens leave Gus Edwards off the field for drives because of how things are going. So I would play Hubbard over him, but that's probably where I stop. So he just barely makes the top 24.
He makes him top 25.
Now watch him be RB10 in the week again.
Yeah, well, that's always the thing with Gus Edwards, too, and Chuba Hubbard. I bet Chuba Hubbard's no different than what you just said about Gus Edwards is discount Derrick Henry. It's funny to think of him that way, but if he's not catching passes, he kind of needs to score 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I knew there was targets. There went 2 targets to running back. Both of them went to Miles Sanders, and he caught one.
Sweet. Is Roschon the lead, or is just Foreman not being active and the game plan that they had the last time we saw them on Monday Night Football, that's the way that they leaned? It was just, hey, let's pass to Roschon, let's use a bunch of Roschon, but it seemed like he had kind of taken over.
Yeah, I still don't even know if it's not necessarily Khalil Herbert, and they just weren't giving him a billion carries as he's coming back still from injury, getting 100% with the bye in mind. So I don't know. Like, if it's mine, like I put the waivers, I have the waivers coming out at midnight. I still go, because all 3 of them are under 60% on Yahoo. I would go Herbert, Foreman, Roschon, but I'm presenting the same thing you did in the column. It's like, they might have switched to Roschon. Am I just taking this much time to trust the rookie? And now it's him. There's a world where maybe Foreman is just looking so good, and it was only the injury situation you brought up. And they're like, you know what? Let's go back to Foreman because he proved he was the best of all options when he was healthy. So I think all 3 of them could be the lead. I think all 3 of them could be the third of the option, and it could be a full-blown committee. I don't want to start any of them. So you have Roschon at 30. If I put Khalil Herbert there, I don't really care. I'd actually put all 3 of them behind both Steelers running backs.
Yeah, I was just looking. I was just looking at that. I'll probably put Roschon behind Breece Hall. Like, Breece Hall's good, but he's useless.
Yeah, I know it's unfortunate for him. And as I brought up, like, they're already talking about going back to Zach Wilson, but he doesn't want to play.
And the Texans actually have a very good run defense. It's their pass defense that isn't very good. And that's not, it was one of the reasons that and this could have went the other way. It's funny because I felt like I read the Jets game right and got the bet wrong. And I didn't necessarily read the Texans game right, but it could have went right. I got the Texans right, but one play at the end of the game, and all of a sudden it's wrong, and Denver wins that game if they're able to convert, and Russ doesn't throw his 3rd pick of the game. But the whole thing was like Russell can't move the ball downfield; they can only run and dump the ball off. If you ask them to start having a vertical offense, like they can't do it.
No, I agree with you on that one, which is why I'd be concerned about it again this week against the Chargers. Assuming the Chargers can charge her. Well, I guess if you don't really want them to, but assuming that they can somewhat move the ball against the Broncos pass defense. But again, we'll talk about Justin Herbert in the passing game when we get to it, but that's going to be an interesting scenario for that one. So yeah, I would be like you have them. I would put him behind both. Probably even behind Breece Hall, as you brought up. The Jets against Houston. Yeah, it's kind of in that range. Singletary on the other side of the ball. I think that's a fair spot for all 3. I mean, I just wish you could just put all 3 Bears running backs together, just slamming bullets on them.
I mean, I don't have Foreman in right now. I want to hear that he's like actually healthy because they haven't had a practice report yet. But you might be right.
I guess the question I should push back to you is, are you still going Singletary over Pierce? Because you have Singletary over Pierce in your rankings, but they went back to Pierce.
Yeah, I'm still in this matchup in particular. I think I like Singletary a lot more because I think that where you get the Jets a lot of the time is with these dump offs, and I feel more confident that they're going to pass to Singletary over Pierce. But I again could just be wrong.
That's the weird thing. He had 1 target. Pierce had 0, and Singletary had 1. What's his face? Andrew Beck, I think, had 2.
Well,
so
Stroud's running more.
Stroud's
running more as well than he was even as much as like a month ago. That the carries are in like the 4 or 5 range. He's getting to double-digit yardage, where those used to just kind of be dump offs.
They are. So I guess here's how I'll flip it to you, because you might answer this question here. Do you think the Texans get into goal to go and are running the ball? Because if so, the answer should be Pierce, because that's the one they're giving the carries to, and they were even kind of doing it during the split.
Okay,
that's where you should go with this.
You know what? So you're probably right on that. So yeah, I'll move Pierce up to number 33. I'll put him 1 spot behind Breece Hall. So now it will go away. I switch Charbonnet and Walker. So I'll go Gus Edwards, Charbonnet, Jerome Ford, Mixon, both Steelers running backs, Warren then Harris. It's a tough matchup in a low total game, even though they both might get like 20 touches in the game. Najee at 31, Breece Hall at 32, Dameon Pierce at 33, then Roschon, Ken Walker, then Singletary, then Kareem Hunt, and Kenneth Gainwell. But obviously Kenneth Gainwell goes way up if DeAndre Swift is out.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I like how that looks. You think this falls under 30.5? You think we get into the 20s on the over-under on that game?
Who's betting the over in this game? Like the way to get the over in that game is both defenses score a touchdown at some point.
This is going to be so bad.
No, it's just awful stuff. Wide receivers. The injuries, Justin Jefferson is going to play. At least that's what they're telling us. Christian Watson, I have out of the rankings because he tweaked his hamstring at the end of Sunday Night Football, and he's already missed time with a hamstring injury this year. A re-aggravation of said hamstring means probably not going to play. Amari Cooper, I have out with a concussion, head injury, whatever the hell they're calling it. Plus, he had the ribs problem coming in. Tank Dell is expected to be Tank Dell is out for the season. Hollywood Brown exited the game, but he is on bye week, so maybe he'll be okay. That was a big miss by both of us that he'd be good once Kyler came back. That was wrong. Shahid missed week number 13. We'll see if he's active. I do not have him in the rankings. Michael Wilson missed the week. Obviously, again, they're on bye. Demario Douglas missed week number 13. We'll see if he's able to get back on the field for a short turnaround time on Thursday Night Football. I have him out of the rankings right now. Do you think that I should have him out of the rankings, or should I put him back in? Because it didn't seem like he was close to playing last week. So if he's still in concussion protocol, he's not playing on Thursday night.
And that's kind of where I lean with it, but I don't know. There didn't seem to be many updates with it. It was just kind of like, you got a concussion. That's it. Yeah. And like at least with the Roshan Johnson situation earlier this year, we got like, he's still suffering from symptoms. We kind of got those updates. This was just kind of, there was nothing, no word of it. And I kept checking because I had him on quite a few teams. I would lean how you're leaning. I would just lean because similar to the Johnson situation earlier this year is once you hit that second week and you weren't even close for the first week, you're kind of missing the second, and especially the second with a short. So I wouldn't put him in as of now. This is the easy one. If Demario Douglas plays, top 36, right?
It's funny because usually it's me who wants to put this type of player a little bit higher. He's sort of like bad Jacoby Myers on the Patriots.
He's actually like 90% Jacoby Myers. Not even that bad of Jacoby Myers. Here's why. Because where do you avoid the Steelers' strongest part of their pass defense? Outside wide receivers and Devontae Parker. So Demario Douglas, I say top 36. I mean, I'm not saying, like, I'm going like, hey, wait, look. Why are you going, You have him at 31. You have him in the ranks and you have him at 31.
I have him in 31. You're right. I thought I must have copied and pasted that from last week. Yeah, I'm not supposed to have him in the rankings. I decided not to have him in. But now to look at it, like, would I play him over Elijah Moore if Joe Flacco is starting? No, I wouldn't.
No. So, and I would play Noah Brown 100%. I would actually have Noah Brown already higher. We're not even there yet, but just I would play Josh Downs even off the down game. Addison with Jefferson, I'd still play. So maybe not top 36. I would basically put Demario Douglas. I guess we're playing him over Thielen because I said that was the last chance. That was your last chance, Gas. You faced the Buccaneers defense, Thielen, and Bryce Young, and you just brought it up. I don't even ask him to pass anymore. So I would go Douglas before I would go Thielen at this point.
Yeah, I'd probably have him like in that Jacoby Myers range right now. And Jacoby Myers at least scores the first touchdown in like half the game, so that's always nice.
I was about to talk about your ranks, but we're not down here yet.
All right,
because there's some others I noticed.
We don't even really need to go over the top. Like, who you're playing. Like,
yeah.
It doesn't really matter if Brandon Ayuk is number 13 and Debo is number 19. Like, you probably don't have both of them, and you're probably playing both of them. The only one is like, I have Justin Jefferson at 4. If he's active, you are playing Justin Jefferson. Like, don't think about that.
And that's as easy as it gets. I was going to say, then let's start right there in the 20s. I would put Noah Brown above Drake London. Those 3 games, not even the 2 big ones, just even including the 3rd game, which was a good one. This dude was top 5 in like every category you could find for wide receiver. And I'm not saying that's going to continue, but you have no Tank Dell, and CJ Stroud is going to continue to pass. So I'd play him over Cooks and over London. London, it's Tampa Bay, but we just kind of we brought up Adam Thielen. Sure, London should do more this week, but this team, how many times have you said it, Pat? They might attempt 20 passes the entire day.
Yeah. It made sense last week not to even go near Drake London, just like against the Jets, like, don't even bother. But that's sort of the situation this week too. Like, I have Nico ranked pretty highly. I don't have the most faith that he's going to do anything, but he's kind of is their target monster. Maybe you're right with Noah Brown this week against the Jets, that this is where they're going to go, is over the middle of the field, especially if Schultz is still out.
Right. Which, of course, Brevin Jordan did some work finally. But yeah, just for matchups, but I think part of it too is, though, I would go Reed a few spots. Like, I would feel better about Reed with no Christian Watson over London and even Noah Brown. So that would be a 2-spot difference. Rashee Rice, what the Chiefs got? They got Buffalo.
Yeah,
I can see the case for Rashee Rice being up there too.
All right, I'll move London behind Rice to 28 and one spot ahead of Garrett Wilson at 29. I have Puka and Cooper Kupp at 30 and 31.
That's who I was just about to bring up.
They should be higher. I mean, I'm terrified of this Ravens defense, especially coming off a bye week.
Clearly.
Like the Rams, I like the Rams. The Rams are like kind of fun. I have a bet on them to make the playoffs, which I really hope comes through, but the Ravens make mincemeat out of every NFC team, and just going on the road, I just don't like the spot for the Rams at all.
So the one thing that I will say is why I would have because this is going to come down to it feels like Cooper Kupp, because it feels like this is Cooper Kupp of the past and this is where Stafford will look first. But as of recent, and even just this past week, it was a lot of Nakua. So I lean Nakua slightly over Kupp, but because both of them can play this role, I don't want to push him too much higher. I would push him higher, but not a ton. It's very similar to the Eagles. Keenan Allen had a big game against them. Who else was there? Was somebody else. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a big game against them. The ones that can do damage over the middle and play some out wide too, which is both Nakua and Kupp, and that's the problem, is getting that area over the middle of the field. That's where you can make some plays and make some plays after the catch. So my case would be to push them a little bit higher. I wouldn't go too crazy if I knew specifically it was going to, they're just going to keep targeting Kupp over the middle the entire game. I'd be like, put Kupp inside the top 20, low 20. That's why I wouldn't push either one of them specifically higher. But I think there's a case for both of them to have a better day.
Okay, so I think Nakua is a better matchup than Kupp, hence why I rank Nakua over Cooper Kupp.
Then I would go
mainly because of his speed.
With Nakua higher.
Like if we're talking about going over the middle and then doing damage after the catch, Kupp's just not as fast as he once was, and Nakua is one of the fastest guys in the NFL, so that's helpful.
So I would go Nakua. I was just about to say maybe over Cooks, but Cooks, everybody throws on the Eagles now, and Dak Prescott's been amazing. So maybe
Nakua over Jaden Reed,
3 spots.
yeah. Like that's the thing. Like once you start getting into I like DeAndre Hopkins this week. I have him at number 21. I think that's where if the Titans are gonna score, it just Will Levis bombing it down the field and taking his chances to DeAndre Hopkins.
I'm gonna have to.
And Hopkins got there this week too.
Yeah, the thing with Jaden Reed is he's not 100% himself, is he? Did he get dinged up in that game? I feel like he did, unless I'm just crazy. He just did nothing.
Yeah, he just didn't do anything. It's a problem. Gabe Davis
was like 4 for 20.
Gabe Davis at 32. Should I just rank him at number 1 because he's playing the Chiefs? 4 touchdowns. Pencil him in.
No, I just pencil him into this ranking all the time. It's going to be wrong. This is the Gabe Davis game. You signed up for this. You play Gabe Davis every single week because you're going to miss the good games and they're going to try and predict. He's going to finish either top 10 or he's going to finish 45th. This is what you have to do.
Elijah Moore, is he too low at 34?
It's a tough. Jacksonville defense good.
It is, but if Cooper is out, and this assumes Flacco is starting, Flacco's got the eyes. Like they have a legitimate connection.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I said, I wouldn't start him over the Rams, over DeMario, over Gabriel Davis. I'd start him over Gabriel Davis. Christian Kirk on the other side of the ball. I'd start him over Christian Kirk.
Okay, so I'll put him. I wouldn't start him over Gabe. I wouldn't start him over Gabe Davis. Especially if I need to get into the playoffs. Yeah, it sucks when you look and Gabe Davis has 1 catch for 9 yards and he's the one who cost you, but he's also the one that could win you this week too. Where I just don't see that happening with Elijah Moore either way.
Elijah Moore could do it on 8 for 80.
When was the last time he went 8 for 80?
I don't know. When was the last time Gabe Davis had a 20-point game? I was actually going to look that up.
It was like 2 weeks ago, wasn't it? Against the Eagles?
So full point PPR, yes. Point PPR, he's got 4 games. Half point PPR, he actually does. In half, he has 3 games of 19.
That's pretty good. Like 4.
He's right there.
Yeah, like 12.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
12 targets for Elijah Moore is nothing to scoff at. This is, a spot where.
So, then let me go to your argument. If they both got 12 targets, I'll take Gabe Davis. Yeah, 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, but we can't count on that because it might be a Shakir game.
Right. Hips, man.
Do I have what do you do with Deontay Johnson, George Pickens with Trubisky against the Patriots on a short week?
You leave them where you have them.
Yeah. So 37 and 39 for them. Thielen sandwiched in between. He's kind of useless these days.
Yeah.
I have T. Higgins at 41. I think that he'll either go up or down depending on how I see that he connects with Jake Browning, but even like you mentioned, Jacksonville has a pretty good defense, although that should be a very pass-heavy script. I did bet the under on his 3.5 receptions in Monday Night Football because I just don't think he's 100%, and Jake Browning sucks.
Look, you're not wrong on Jake Browning as a player, but his completion percent, he's actually a very capable accuracy quarterback. So where I'm saying, like, I don't think that's going to turn into wins or turn into an amazing week or for anybody. But what you initially started this whole discussion with is seeing T. Higgins out there is you brought up the Joe Flacco. He has eyes for Elijah Moore. What if T. Higgins is close to 100%? And what if Jake Browning is just more comfortable with T. Higgins? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but you bring it over to the Indianapolis Colts matchup next week and what we see on Monday Night Football. And if you give 8-9 targets for T. Higgins, the thing is, T. Higgins as a talent and Jake Browning as his completion ability, 9 or 10 targets is going to lead to 7 or 8 receptions. And that's why he might be in play next week.
Maybe, but it just even to look back at Browning's start last week against the Steelers, like the team leader in targets was Chase with 6, and 2 of his receptions were bank passes off the hands of Steelers.
Well, yeah, that's also because they got their hands up. Jake Browning also has that Eli Manning problem where he keeps the ball too low past the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what the Jacksonville game is going to tell us potentially about the Colts game, but you can run a lot on the Colts. It's harder to pass on the Colts. So it seems like a very low upside situation.
Yeah, could it be upside for the Colts defense again? That was fun last week.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they just block every punt, then there you go. The two that like I didn't even want to rank were Tyler Lockett and Chris Godwin. I know Godwin scored a touchdown, but that was lucky.
I don't know how you play either one of them at this point.
Yeah, it's tough. But like, would you play them over Robert Woods?
I'm all over Robert Woods.
Well, that's the territory we're into now. Like Mingo, Jamison Williams, Jalen Hyatt, Josh Palmer might be back. That might
hold it. Hey, let me go back real quick too. Like Chris Godwin's wasn't even a receiving touchdown. I'm not even giving him that much credit for that one.
It was a rushing touchdown.
Yeah, just like Jamison Williams. I'm not giving him credit for like only running like 10 routes. He ran one in. I'm not counting on that every single day. So, no, I would play Mingo though. Mingo 6 for 60 and 6 for 69 the past 2 weeks. He's become the consistent option.
All right, would you play Mingo over Thielen? In the like one time they got to the 2 times they got to the red zone, they did try to force it to Thielen until Hubbard ran it in.
Yes. I was going to bring that up as the red zone. I wonder if they pulled that up, the red zone targets for Carolina last week. I'd still lean Thielen barely. You know what? That's one of those ones where, if I'm just trying to make the playoffs and I'm shooting for upside, I think the upside play is now Thielen, and that Mingo would be the safe one.
All right.
Strangely enough.
I'll move Mingo above Godwin. Like Trey Palmer's doing more in the receiving game than Chris Godwin is right now.
That is true. Actually, they both had, Mingo and Thielen both had 1 red zone target, and Mingo actually had an end zone target, not Thielen.
I bet you that was close.
So go back to Tyler Lockett real quick. I thought we were going to start having a conversation do we start Tyler Lockett or Smith and Jigba?
I mean, they're very close in the rankings. You could do that no problem, and I wouldn't have a problem with it.
It's just they're not even that any good at this point.
Yeah.
The one I did notice already in your ranks, because with the assumption, so you have Josh Palmer at 55. They said last week, even Staley even said, we hope he returns this week. That sounded like he wasn't even close. I'm saying that to say this. I'm saying if he is back, it doesn't sound like he's going to be back unless he's ready because of the phrasing that Staley said. If he's back, he's clearly far and away better than Johnston. Jalen Guyton he took this opportunity in that first game, but Guyton's failed since. I would play Josh Palmer over Tyler Lockett. I would play Josh Palmer over T. Higgins, just because what we know he is. But again, I'm prefacing that with that he's back. Like we get a full practice on Thursday or full practice on Friday, because this offense looked completely different. It was basically like Mike Williams left and Palmer stepped right in and everything was going great. Once Palmer left, everything went to hell.
Yeah, it's true. I'll put him at number 52 for the moment, and I'll monitor his status as everything goes along.
That's fair.
Tight ends, Higbee, left the game with a concussion for the Rams. Dalton Schultz did not play because of a hamstring problem. Hayden Hurst still has a concussion. He's been out for weeks. So that means Stephen Sullivan can get his one target for 15 yards every single week on Carolina. And Dallas Goedert, I could see him returning this week and just to play against Dallas. If he wasn't put on injured reserve, obviously they think that they can wrap him up at some point with his broken arm. But like, how can you play a guy with a broken arm?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how do you catch with a broken arm?
I don't know. So
I guess we'll find out.
So tight ends, I got Kelsey, Hawkinson, Laporta, Hill, and Kittle, top 5. I do have Dalton Schultz in. I have him at number 6, but Brevin Jordan wouldn't make the top 10 if Schultz is out. Kincaid at 7, Njoku, Evan Ingram, Isaiah Likely, Freiermuth, and Kate Otten coming off a very delicious 0-point performance against Carolina. Then I have Pitts, then Waller, who's apparently back, and then Goddard at 15, and Jake Ferguson, Kmet, Tucker Kraft, like those guys.
And Jake Ferguson needs to be at number 9.
Okay, sure.
If not higher. He's been really good. And what do we do against the Eagles? The last time he faced the Eagles, I'm pretty sure you might here. I'll just pull it up. I'll find out.
You can effort
Jake
that.
Ferguson, 7 for 91 and a touchdown on 10 targets against the Eagles last time.
Done. Do we worry about Kincaid if Knox is back?
Not as much. Yes, a little bit. Just because this comes down to something you and I have talked about it. I kept referencing it also with Trey McBride, but thankfully they released Zach Ertz. But the whole O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate situation from years ago, O.J. Howard was like, we want O.J. Howard to happen. And they're like, well, he's the better blocker than Cameron Brate. Sorry, he's going to block. I bring that up to say, Dawson Knox, better blocker. Maybe he takes some snaps away, but I don't think they're going to change what Kincaid's been able to do for this offense, where they're going to be like, you know what, Kincaid, you're going to go back to a 60-40 split. 60% of it's going to Knox. So I would say you ding him a little bit, so you do have him, where I think you put Kincaid in the conversation.
Yeah, I just moved him to 10.
Even that, I'd probably still go over Ingram. Ingram's just been floor. He's boring.
He is boring, but he's going to get you your 10 to 12 points a week, and maybe eventually he'll score a touchdown. Yeah, I think he has the most receptions in the league this year without a touchdown.
It's insane. Actually, I don't think, does he? No, see, in PPR, he doesn't even have double digits since week 8.
Really?
It's been a great floor. Yeah, 5.2, 6.9, 9. He barely missed it, 9.9. He's been a floor guy.
Yeah,
I would go the upside of Kincaid over him.
Okay, sure. I'll move Kincaid to 9, Ingram to 10, Ferguson at 8. That sound good?
How much did you hate putting Njoku that high?
I actually don't mind it. Like, he's been relatively he's their best receiving option, it seems. Like, with these loser quarterbacks that they have, like, it's just the easiest throw for them to make. I do dislike how every time he gets the ball, he tries to hurdle someone.
That's his highlight move, man. I'll tell you what. You're with me on this, right? There's no way. Like, this is Joe Flacco refused to take the Jets' call. There's no way the Jets didn't think about getting Joe Flacco under quarterback, right?
Well, I haven't got to talk about this with anyone yet. And I was going to leave it for Cust on Tuesday's show, but how is it? Like, how bad? I get that the offensive line is bad in New York, and it's hard to put anyone behind it. But there's other teams with terrible offensive lines as well. Like, Cleveland's offensive line is so dinged up at this moment, and they're running, like, low quality. They just called up Joe Flacco off his couch. It was like, hey, can you play quarterback? And he looked competent. Like, you weren't sitting there watching the Browns offense being like, well, there's no chance they get 2 yards here or complete a pass. Like it is when you watch the Jets offense. Like, this is just, I don't know what's going on. Like, it has to be a Nathaniel Hackett thing at some point, doesn't it? That all these guys are terrible?
Could not agree more. I mean, look at the fact, like, again, as miserable as they've been, the Giants' offensive line is on, like, 4th string units. They're playing Tommy flipping DeVito, and they're putting up 20-something points and throwing 2 and 3 touchdowns. Like, this, yeah, like you said, at some point, we can joke about the quarterbacks all we want, and that's why, let's pull in another team. That's why I think there's legitimate conversations people are having about Bill Belichick and his job, because at some point, the excuses can't just keep going to the offensive line and the quarterback as the only 2 problems on the team.
It just looks so hard for the Jets and the Patriots to score, 10 points and gain 5 yards on offense. At least the Patriots were okay at running the ball for a while till Stevenson got hurt.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you. Oh, God, I had a bet and props on that one. Watch that one go up in flames real quick. That felt like one of the easiest ones of the week.
I know.
But you're not wrong. Like, part of what I'm so infuriated with the Giants by is because I said it to you. I said it to Chris Meany on my show too 3 weeks ago. I said they're going to win 2, 3, 4 more games the rest of the season and screw up this whole damn process, and we're back to Daniel Jones again. But why are they doing it? It's because their coaches have imaginations. The coaches call plays with the skill players that they have and say, you know what? This is all we can do. So let's do this, and maybe we can make some things happen. You are not wrong at all. If you have Zach Wilson at quarterback, he's not good. Mac Jones, not good. Zappy, not good. We can go down the list. But you can find something for them to be able to do to make the offense move a few feet at a time.
I actually think that Mac Jones is going to have a very long career as a backup. He's a perfect backup.
Oh, he's new Matt Castle.
I was going to say he's kind of like Gardner Minshew. Like, he's just a very accurate passer. If you give him some time, he'll be able to complete 10-yard passes.
That's why I was going with Matt Castle. I think Gardner Minshew is a little more reckless than Mac Jones.
Yeah, Gardner Minshew is fun to watch. He's not good.
He's so much fun.
He is, and they keep winning games. I don't know how they do it, but they keep doing it. Missed extra points here. Just weird stuff keeps happening in Colts games. Quarterback rankings, I have Dak at number 1, Tua at 2, Josh Allen at 3, Lamar, Purdy, Hurts, Mahomes, Fields, the Goof, and then Jordan Love at number 10. After that, it's like Russell Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Gardner Minshew, CJ Stroud against the Jets. That's a tough one. Like, what do you do with CJ Stroud this week? Like, down, I don't know how much of an impact Tank Dell is going to have on this offense not being there, but it's got to hurt a little bit. Like, that is your vertical option.
It's a big one. And the biggest thing, something with CJ Stroud this year is that Tank Dell, now it's become more consistent on whether or not he's been under pressure later into the season because Tank Dell's developed, CJ Stroud has developed. But it still holds true is that when CJ Stroud has had time in the pocket, he goes to Tank Dell more than Nico Collins because Nico Collins gets open quicker. Tank Dell, you need that few extra second and a half to get behind the defense. And then once he does, he gets downfield. So you're going to lose that. I don't know how much you would have got. Like, do you know the Jets? Are the Jets high in pressure rate against the quarterback, or are they kind of middle of the pack just because it's all about their secondary?
I mean, they do get to the quarterback a little bit. Their pressure rate isn't the greatest, but quarterbacks suck in New York. Every single one of them.
I was just going to say, since week 7, they're 5th.
Yeah,
they're only behind the Jaguars, Cowboys, Lions, and 49ers.
But just go look at some of the luminaries that New York has shut down in New York so far this season. Like, they made Josh Allen look terrible. Obviously, the Patriots, everyone kind of makes them look terrible. They made Mahomes look terrible. They made Jalen Hurts look terrible. They made Herbert. I mean, Herbert won the game, but he didn't really do anything in that game. They scored a special teams touchdown and kept turning over Zach Wilson. Tua looked the best, and even he didn't really have that great of a game on Black Friday. And Ritter was like taking knees on third down just to run the clock out before the end of the game. They were like, please don't pass. Just don't turn the ball over, man.
I think for everything you're saying in this entire conversation, and that's why 15 feels like a fair spot. If somebody out there wants to start him and push him a little bit higher, I'm not going to argue much. But you mentioned it, a rookie, no Tank Dell. Hopefully Noah Brown can step in and be what he was for those 3 games. But it's a bad spot. I think everybody you have in front of him are worth starting. And I'll give you an example. I had CJ Stroud in the flex leagues, and as soon as Jordan Love started turning the corner, because I saw this coming and I saw Stroud's schedule versus Love and the fact that he's got the Giants this week, I picked up the backup option, and I'm starting Love over Stroud this week.
Yeah, as would I. Of all the names that you see behind him on that list, Jameis, Ritter, Levis, Mayfield, Dobbs, Geno Smith.
There's not a single one. I scanned the list. I looked.
Levis would be the one.
I was like,
I mean, Winston could just go full Winston and he could be fine, I suppose, because they're playing Carolina. But Carolina's defense actually looked a little bit better. And they got they got a lot of guys back, and they lost Burns halfway through that game when he got ejected against the Bucs too. Right when they were trying to.
J.C. Horn's been a big factor.
Yeah. So Ritter and Levis, I think on paper have really good matchups. It's just they're not good. So you're really flipping a coin there. Like, you can either take CJ Stroud, who is good but has a terrible matchup, or take the guys who aren't good but have good matchups. Like that's your pick your poison if it comes down to it.
Well, that's why I scanned the entire list, and the only name that even stood out to me was Matthew Stafford. Then let's go back to it. He's facing the Ravens. So I'm not gonna really argue much difference for CJ Stroud. The only one that I'll just throw out there is that we got a floater, and I'm not saying like I don't want to start Joshua Dobbs, but we got that rumor that got started right before they hit their bye that they might be actually turning to Jaron Hall or Nick Mullins this
They're
week.
not. They're gonna play Josh Dobbs.
You think?
I think so. Yeah. You got to give him a
Just
game
because they're still in the race?
Yeah, well, he's 2-2 as their starter, and this happened with Jordan Love a little bit as well. That we saw Josh Dobbs on an island game, and it's not like he was playing great by any means, but he was doing what he needed to do to win. He was using his legs. They don't have the greatest offensive line in the world, so he was extending plays a little bit, and he got lucky for 2 games and played well for 2 games, and they won. They lost a heartbreaker to Denver, and then everyone saw him in this island game. He was absolutely putrid. And the same thing happened with Jordan Love earlier in the season when they played the Raiders too. Like that was the game that everyone watched Jordan Love play, and he sucked. And it turns out that he wasn't as bad as the sort of baseline that you have in your head. I think the same thing is happening with Dobbs now. Like Dobbs isn't great, but he's not nearly as bad as we saw on Monday night. Like sometimes guys have really terrible games.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think Jordan Love had a longer stretch than Dobbs did, actually, though. It was like a good 5 games.
Sure, but he's come out of it the other side now, and he actually looks pretty good.
Yes. Yeah. Actually looks like he did the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, so the 2 that I would kind of say, like might have like Geno backdoor, just bombing it to DK. That could work out, even though they're double-digit underdogs against San Francisco. But Aiden O'Connell would be the one I'd look at. Like he's okay. He seems like a pretty decent game manager. They don't ask him to do that much, but it's against the Chargers, and the Chargers could just be packing it in at this point.
Oh, for Aiden O'Connell's Minnesota.
Oh yeah, that's right. Who are the Chargers playing?
Chargers got Broncos. Russ Wilson at home.
That's right. For some reason, I keep thinking they play.
I was going to actually, when you brought up Aiden O'Connell, I was going to say that's my actual little bit of a concern is that Minnesota has been good against the run. You're taking that little aspect away from.
Because when I looked at the rankings, I was like, I would have him higher against the Chargers. Why do I have him so low? But yes, that makes way more sense now. Minnesota's ultimate pressure D.
Yes.
Just blitz.
Look out for Minnesota.
I have Flacco in. I have him at number 25. Do you think that he ends up starting? Like, even if Dorian Thompson-Robinson is healthy enough to play, do you think they go back to him or start Flacco?
No. This is playoffs. They're still in the mix. They're probably going to make it. They're playing Flacco the rest of the way.
Flacco looked okay.
He looked like the same Flacco we've always known. This is the Flacco we do know, is that he kind of balances out across running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. This is why Njoku is back in play. Keeps things short. We know what was he before he retired the first time? Let's put that in quotes. It's like, what was it, like 8 yards per attempt? Like he's not going to throw the ball downfield. So this actually works for the skill set that this team has. This works out great for Flacco.
It does. It makes playing defense. I mean, maybe that's why Elijah Moore can get behind the defense once or twice if they do take a shot. And he got his ass cheek in on one of the catches. They said butt cheek on the broadcast, or the ref said that. But when you're playing Cleveland now, you can basically just bring everyone up to the line.
No, you can. And actually, I think that's part of the reason Jerome Ford struggled last week.
Yeah, he was more involved in the receiving game, though, with Flacco. That was one thing that I pointed out to Tambo. It didn't end up coming to fruition. He did have a receiving touchdown, which was really nice. That was a really nice play design by Stefanski on that one. But he like the week before, he had ran a route on 80% of the snaps that he was on for passing plays, not asked to block. Maybe they'll bring in Kareem Hunt and ask him to block a little bit more, that they have an immobile quarterback versus a mobile quarterback. But it does seem like Flacco is far more likely to check down than Dorian Thompson-Robinson, or PJ Walker, who would just run.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things we talked about last week when I was talking with Manny, is that Joe Flacco over 20% targeting running backs at times. So he's somebody that has the history of throwing to running backs.
Defenses, before we get out of here, I got the Steelers at number 1, the Colts at number 2, Jags, Ravens, Niners. That's the top 5. Then I have Green Bay, New England on the other side of the ball from Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Houston, New Orleans, then the Jets, Minnesota, the Bears, Broncos, Miami, Dallas, Detroit, Carolina, Kansas City, Philadelphia, and Buffalo, Atlanta, and Tampa Bay. I ranked 23 defenses this week. I think there's 23 defenses
a lot this week.
I think they're all I don't want to say they're all viable. Obviously, the Bucks at number 23 aren't like a great play, but I could still see streaming them. Usually what I do is when I do the defensive ranking, because sometimes I have like 15 ranked, sometimes I have 21 ranked, 23 this week, even though there's 2 teams on bye, that I could see myself in a pinch playing any one of these defenses, and they wouldn't be the worst.
No, they wouldn't. I'm actually looking at your list right now compared to who I listed for streaming defenses. And initially, I mean, I basically copy paste from last week because I do 2 weeks at a time. And then I get rid of all the ones that have been picked up that hit over 60. And initially, I had from last week the Saints over the Colts. But looking at this and then now what we just talked about with Bryce Young, I think I'd actually be with you on this because the Panthers aren't going to ask Bryce Young to throw as much as they used to.
That was the whole thing. And if it just becomes a running game, it's like why Houston isn't as high as probably they should be against the Jets, that I could just see the Jets, they're just going to squeeze the life out of the game. And yeah, they did turn it over 4 times last week. Atlanta was actually a pretty good play, but that seems like a bit of an outlier. 4 turnovers and 3 of them off fumbles.
It's funny. Yeah, you're not wrong. And I was going to say, it's funny. The one that I was going to say, like, is the Hail Mary defense of the week. You have them at 13. The Bears, because it's golf outdoors.
Yeah.
And he's been throwing interceptions again.
And listen, the Bears defense, I kind of mocked it at the time when they traded for Montez Sweat, because I still think they gave up too much for a guy they could have signed in the offseason, potentially, or someone who's his equivalent for that much money. But their defense has been better since they got him. They actually get to the quarterback a little bit now.
That on top of the fact since week 5, I've talked about it a lot. They're still the highest running back stuff percentage in the league. They slam people at the line.
And that forces teams to throw.
Not that I'm worried about Montgomery.
No, I'm not worried about
that's
them
true.
either. But yeah, because the Bears will just have their inevitable 15 minutes where they forget how to play football during the course of every game.
That's a really good point. At least one drive, if not 2.
Exactly. Jake Ciely at All In Kid on the X Machine and at theathletic.com. He's got waiver wire tonight. He has his rankings coming out midnight on Tuesday. You can find all my rankings currently up in the description or on dknation.com. What else you got going on this week, Jake?
That's really it. We're hitting the home stretch here outside of Sirius XM on Saturday mornings, but that's way down the end of the week. It's just getting ready. You know what? I need to brainstorm. You might need to help me with one, although you always throw out stupid ones that I've never actually used for my new top 10 list this week to rank.
So the top 10 rub and tugs local to you did not make the cut?
And somebody actually put it in the comments. They're like, I thought you were going to rank that. I was like, no. Why would I even know that?
How about you rank the top 10 items you can buy at omahasteaks.com with code Mayo?
do I get part of the proceeds? Is that how that works?
I mean, they've already paid me. I don't get anything additional on top of it, so no.
Oh. Well, that's not fun.
Sorry. Smash a like while you're here. Sub to Mayo Media Network and subscribe to the audio podcast. You missed the recap of the week I did with Kevin Cole. That went up very early on Monday morning. We talked about playoff odds in both the NFC and AFC. Bit of a different discussion than I normally do with Cust and a guest on the recap show. So a more serious look because I did not do a live show. But that will be back this week, as will all of the normal shows. So please tune into all of those. And I will see you next time.
Mayo experience! Experience!